Welcome to the OC Politics Show, keeping politics bipartisan, local, and on the level.
Hey, welcome to the third week of the OC Politics Show. And yeah, we're still trying to get some bugs worked out. And when I say bugs, it's me. And also, if you notice a little bit of a scruff here, I'm going to attempt to do something different here with my face during this during the COVID. So just playing around, nothing else to do. So. So this is going to be an action-packed show this week, and I don't know how long it's going to be, but it's definitely going to have some great conversation, or at least going to hopefully pique your interest. So tomorrow, the Santa Ana City is doing a recall election, and when I was looking it up and do some research on it, it looked pretty straightforward. Excuse me. But man, there are definitely some layers to this onion that go back a few years, and not necessarily specifically on this one particular councilwoman who voted against the Santa Ana Police Department's pay raise, a 25% pay raise, which the union was looking for. And this kind of got the union going against her. And I just in general, I'm pretty pro police, right? So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, what's going on here? And then I did a little digging, and there were some interesting facts associated with it that we'll get into. Now I'm not gonna say Happy Memorial Day, right? Because it's Memorial Day definitely is not supposed to be a happy day. It is a day of reflection of those who we lost in war. And I know it's the official kickoff of summer. Beaches are open in lots of places, across America that haven't been open for the last, few weeks since we've been hitting the COVID. But, they're out there doing stuff. People are, I guess, having barbecues. Thing is, a couple things on this one. One is the VA has stated that they do not want anybody going into the cemeteries to lay flags, specifically the Boy Scouts. And the reason why the Boy Scouts every year have laid the little flags next to all the graves of the service members who died. So they're not allowing that to go on, yet they're allowing, they being the governments in general, are allowing barbecues and that kind of stuff to happen today. So it's really kind of mixed messages being sent, and I really kind of wish that we could get on the same page at some point, and have a consistent message going out. And I really think that's been a problem across this entire COVID issue, where we have had mixed messages. Interesting fact that some of the states that have opened up earlier in the last 72 hours or so, they said there's been a spike in cases of COVID being reported in those 72 hours. And it makes me think a little bit. And this is where it comes on the politics side. And I know this is not Orange County specific, but I just want you guys to kind of think about it. So we're talking 14-day incubation period. So if you open the beaches 3 days ago, or open the state 3 days ago, how did we have this spike in COVID-related cases when you need to have at least 14 days? So that means those spike actually was going to occur regardless if you opened or not, right? So again, I don't know why that reporting is that way. I don't know if it's fear-mongering, which is really starting to bother me a lot. I don't know what's going on with that, but think about that for a minute. We open up and there's a spike. Well, it would be that spike actually should happen in 12 days from now, right? Not from something that happened 3-4 days ago. So that's that. I'm not going to get deep into that. It doesn't really impact us here, what we're talking about in Orange County necessarily. But that's not what the show is about today. The show today is we're going to just focus specifically on the Santa Ana recall. And I titled it Santa Ana Recall political corruption or a union hit job, because yeah, it could be both, and they're not mutually exclusive for that matter. And I know that I risk having Santa Ana Police Department be mad at me for that title, but um, I think that I think it's a question that we need to ask is the why, right? And every time we take a look at politics, specifically local politics, any politics for that matter, but we're talking here, is why are things being played out the way they are, right? What do recalls really mean? What is the purpose of the recall? That's the first question that we need to ask before we go to why. Is what is the purpose of the recall? Recalls in general are used as a political tool when the representative of your area, whether it's a city council member or whatever, is doing things that are not above board, whether they're not representing you in the way that they said they would. So, in other words, I don't think this is my personal opinion. I don't think recalls should be used in the fact of, say, uh, uh, a Republican, because we don't have yeah, I don't think there's any city that does in Orange County. I have to check myself on that. But they're all nonpartisan, and that goes back. We can go into the lessons of why, but since you're here, you probably know why. But so if somebody who is Republican leading or Democrat leading, specifically in your city, uh, represents themselves the opposite way, says, "Hey, uh, I'm a super liberal person," or whatever, and then they get caught into a political position to where you think you're representing them, and they're not doing that job. Could you use recall for that? I suppose, but in general, it should be like if there's been higher, not necessarily if it's ethical, they're gonna get. What I mean, ethics, they can actually be removed different ways, but using the recall shouldn't be for political purposes. And it seems to be that's what I mean when I say political purposes, because you don't like the way they vote. You wait your 2 4 years, whatever the cycle is, and you vote them out that way. That's the way the system really set up, not because they happen to vote some way that you disagree with, so then you start a recall campaign. A good example of recall was with Gray Davis, and because of a bunch of things that he was doing that were just really causing havoc and expenses on taxes, and that's why the recall with him. So yeah, they're all, I guess in general they're all political, but the motive shouldn't just because I'm a Republican and I want to get a Democrat out, or I'm a Democrat and I want to get a Republican out so I can have my seat. That's what the ballot box is for. And I see us using recalls in California um, more of a way to get the party that you are more affiliated with into a position than not. Now, is this the case here in Santa Ana? So the Santa Ana voters tomorrow are going to go and vote on a recall, and then they're going to vote who they should replace that person with, and that's the function tomorrow. But what is this really about? So Santa Ana voters are going to be asked to remove a sitting councilwoman, um, and there's been a couple of charges, if you will, uh, not legal charges, but political charges against her. And one is that she um, was in favor of a development that some of the people in the neighborhood didn't necessarily care for. Okay, that's that, right? Now, I'm not saying that there were any of this happening, but it didn't look like, from everything I was researching, that there was like any kickbacks. That's illegal, so she would have gone to jail anyway. That there wasn't any political favors being done in this thing. Nothing that was like really just brought out. Just the fact that this particular group of people didn't care for that project, and went after her. Now, she did was involved in a lawsuit against the city and against the county, who people are saying was a frivolous lawsuit. Okay, that's that. Again, is that something that should be recalled on, or could it just be brought up in the next election cycle to not vote her in? In general, Ms. Iglesias is also running for, or has at least said she wants to run for mayor in November. So there's that as well, right? So she will be up for election, and they could, vote her out at this point. So it's costing the city about $700,000 to run this campaign, or to run this election. So let's get into this. Let's talk about finances here for a minute, because that's the part here that really kind of blew my mind as I was doing the research. So the election was really set into motion by the Santa Ana Police Officer Association after Iglesias voted for giving Santa Ana police officers a $25 million in pay raises, including retroactive pay. So the union has spent $301,000 on their efforts to remove Ms. Iglesias from the city council. Now, take a look at this. Why was this vote for $25 million pay raises? And it seems like the union hasn't, or the police department hasn't gotten pay raises in a few years. A couple other benefits associated with it and things like this really kind of played out. So what's going on? Well, a few years ago, I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but Santa Ana had their own fire department, and they moved from their own fire department to Orange County Fire Authority, which was a huge news when it happened. This is 2012-ish, somewhere in that mark area. Why? Why did they go to Orange County Fire Authority? And it seemed like it was almost overnight when this occurred, but I mean, I know there's more to it than that. It's budget, right? It's budget at the end of the day. Santa Ana is having some serious financial issues. And in general, it seems like the city has been run poorly, financially speaking, over the last almost 20 years, it looks like. And they're putting money into things that, I don't know. I can't say they're frivolous. I mean, I'm not a voter there. I'm just talking about some of the things they're putting money into, and then they're holding money off of other areas. So I can understand the frustration that the police union is having, saying, "Hey, you're spending money here, but you're not spending money on us." Although they do have a beautiful police station. If you've never been down to their Taj Mahal of a police department, it's gorgeous, actually. And yeah, so, but they haven't put the money in necessarily into the office, to the officers. So in 2017-18, Santa Ana had a projected $17 million hole in their budget. $17 million. This is before COVID, right? This is before any of this happened. So if you're short $17 million, how in God's name do you get $25 million extra to be able to pay for the police department for raises? The math just doesn't. Cities are not the federal government where you just go into your basement and turn on your printing press and start printing the paper, right? I mean, as you watch the politicians out here to last few days in DC, they're like, yeah, here's trillions of dollars that we'll just pull out of the thin air and give to everybody, because they literally can pull it out of thin air, right? There's this concept of the modern monetary, which is not really modern, but there's this concept called modern monetary funding, and the idea is that you just deficit spend, right? And the federal government can deficit spend. It doesn't make a difference. It's just numbers, right? They truly believe in this. People who subscribe to this philosophy, is they truly believe that there's no such thing as actual money, right? I know we are in a fiat currency for sure, which as I'm saying, it's not necessarily modern as I think it is, but we still had a standard of saying, hey, a dollar means a dollar, and we are going to subscribe to that. That being said, that the dollar is just as valuable as what the federal government says, or that the International Money Fund, if you will, what they believe that the dollar's worth, and they believe that based upon the stability of the country. So if you take an American dollar, for instance, worldwide, it's going to be always worth more than, say, one from Zimbabwe, because I mean, if you remember Zimbabwe's hyperinflation, they had to make a $10 million note because they couldn't produce enough $1. The dollar was all worthless basically. So our dollars is propped up, if you will, for lack of a better term, and I know that's not the word that you probably want to hear, just by the fact that we're America, and that worldwide they were stable, or we were at least a stable country, and so hyperinflation wasn't really going to happen here because with the Fed and the monetary policies of the United States, we could keep the dollar, called dollar stable. And there's some really interesting books on just how it works, right? How monetary funding works, and it's actually kind of fascinating in a way. Outside of just the boring economics type stuff. So anyway, so they go through this process of doing this, right? Now, the only organization in the United States that's allowed to print money, allowed to create money, allowed to just arbitrarily pull stuff out of the air and say this is money that we're going to be able to spend, is Congress, right? Along with giving the Treasury the permission to go ahead and print. So Santa Ana's facing this is a couple years ago, a $17 million budget hole in the upcoming fiscal year. So why? Where's the $17 million budget hole going into? And most of it is what they're saying is in the skyrocketing pension costs for its employees. So it's a labor issue again. It's not, they need to build roads, need to build buildings. It comes down to labor. So like in any business, where is the most expensive part of any business? It's in labor. And so when you start taking a look at a $17 million budget hole and its labor costs, there's a few ways that you can deal with it. One is you do hiring freeze, you do pay freezes, you don't give raises, you can cut positions, you can reduce pay, right? There are some cities today that are doing 10 and 15% pay cuts of furloughing people off. They're doing they're making people work 30 hours instead of 40 hours. Some cities up in, a friend of mine works for a city up north of us, and they are looking, they laid off 410 people, and they're looking at doing a 10% pay cut. A lot of guys that are up there and gals that are in public safety said they're just going to retire. I think I talked about this last week. So that $17 million budget hole also moves into a projected $40 million budget gap within 5 years from this story. By the way, all the stories I'm talking about will be linked down below. So $40 million in 5 years. Again, if you're in a $40 million budget hole, where do you find $25 million to do pay raises? It just doesn't make economic sense. So The city manager then said that obviously this is a non-stable, it's not unsustainable in growth. Other cities are struggling with pensions. Pensions is the largest amount of where you put your tax money is going right now. The largest amount is going into pensions. Now, I'm not saying that the people who worked for 25 years, 30 years don't deserve the pension. I'm not arguing that at all. I'm not arguing that the cities were terrible when it came into budgeting for those pensions, and they just deferred compensation. They did deferment on paying, right? And when you start doing, it's called, if you think about buildings, right? And there's things called deferred maintenance. So you take a look at a building is to be maintained, and you push that off to next month, to next month, to next month, next year, next fiscal year. And at some point, you're going to have to replace the entire building because it's just you can't fix it anymore. So your costs that come up beforehand, right, are might be cheaper. So say I'm making these numbers up. Say it's $3,000 to replace a roof, but you defer that down the road, then it becomes a $25,000 roof, and then it becomes a 100,000 or $1 million building that you have to replace. Same issue happened here with the with pensions. So every time that the governments got into budgetary issues, they asked for a deferred payment on their pensions, which means they still have to owe it, and so now they're back in the hole, millions of dollars. What's the answer? A few years ago, a city declared bankruptcy, San Bernardino, and the one of the reasons why they declared bankruptcy, number one, they don't have any money, but two, now they're able to basically renegotiate what that pension is going to look like. And I think it's wrong in one aspect for the pensioners because they took their time and they did what they're supposed to be doing, and there's a promise that the city made to those who were working that they're going to receive X amount of money in their pension, and when it gets restructured, they may actually get a cut in their pension. So say you're making $70,000 a year on your pension, they go back and they cut it, and then you're down to 60,000 a year in your pension. How does that person make up that $10,000 difference? Because they're not working, right? Or most of them aren't, and they have a deficit in their they're in their fixed income. They don't have the ability to go out necessarily and make more money. Now that's when you start seeing like the old people at Walmart being the greeters, right? Because they're trying to make up that difference. Maybe they can a little bit with Social Security if they didn't plan. So this is why you're starting to see more and more people going into the 401ks or the 403bs for education, or the 457s, those things, because you need to have a better diversified, even if you have a pension coming in, funding, basically because you can be caught up in this budget crisis. A lot of background specifically on this thing. So now got a couple more minutes left here, and I kind of want to get into some of the politics part of it, though, the background. So the Santa Ana Police Officer Association, the president of this organization, is an interesting fellow. He wanted to run for city council in a different city, but however, he got into some legal issues, and I'm not going to get into that because you can look it up yourself. Anyway, he got into some legal issues, and so he couldn't run, and he was actually removed as a police officer from the city of Santa Ana for a short period of time, got his job back. And so he went through the process. So that's the way the process is set up, right? So I'm not going to slag that either. Those are some of the issues with him. So he goes into this, and then it moves into where we are today with the politics. So what does this mean? right? What does this mean necessarily? It means that there's more to this story than that there's out there. In some aspects, it seems like this councilwoman is getting the short end of the stick. I don't think all the people that are out there rallying against her necessarily did the research into the background of the Santa Ana Police Officers Association, what their issues are with her. Um, why couldn't they wait until the next election and put money into it and not get her elected? The city of Santa Ana is already in a $40 million projected hole. With COVID coming and the issues that are associated with the financial impact across the board in every city in Orange County, $700,000 to do a special election seems to be money that shouldn't be spent right now. Now, mind you, this stuff was already put into motion prior to COVID, so it couldn't be stopped anyway. As residents of Orange County, of the city that you live in, these are the problems that face all of us. And these are the problems that we need to really look at is the financial aspects of things. We're coming into a point now where across the board, we're going to have financial impact. The city I live in, a couple $1 million in the hole, laying off some part-time workers, things like that. Costa Mesa, huge impact. Anaheim, with the tourism being down, Disney being closed, all the hotels being closed, huge impact. When we start asking for things, we need to be better stewards of who we are as a community. And again, this is why local politics matter. Until next week, take care.